Okay, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're listening to this. I'm going to just go over a few concepts here, and I'm filming by myself, so I'll be moving my iPad around a little bit so that you could see what you have to do. Now, the first thing I want to talk about with you is equivalent fractions, okay? Equivalent fractions are fractions that are equal, just the same amount of pieces broken up, but just more of them. Okay, so if we look at the example here, we have 1/2 is the same as 2/4, that is the same as 4/8. Okay, they all equal 1/2 of your shape covered. So you start and think, well, I'm going to make a shape, break it up into two pieces, and I'm just going to cover one side of it because that's 1/2. Then I'll make a shape again, and instead of just once, I'm going to do it twice and shade in the same amount. So that's my 2/4. It's still half of the shape shaded in. And for this shape, it's essentially just a little bit bigger so that you could see it better. I've divided up into 8 pieces and have shaded in 4 spots, just like it's telling in the numerator. And again, it is half the shape. So all these are called equivalent fractions because they're essentially equal the same thing. Okay? And another thing you can do to get an equivalent fraction is, say you have the fraction of 2/3. I want to make an equivalent fraction. Well, I could pick any number, and as long as I multiply the denominator and the numerator by the same number, I have an equivalent fraction. So in this case, I decided to multiply the denominator by 5. And again, what you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator. And I have 15. 2 times 5 is 10, so my equivalent fraction is now 10/15. Okay? We're going to do a little bit more about this when I start talking about putting fractions in order, or which is bigger, which is smaller. Okay? So this is an important rule you'll need to always remember when you're dealing with fractions. When you get to adding and subtracting fractions in grade 7, you will need to know this little rule, that whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator, okay? You can't just do one thing and leave the numerator out, because then you do not have a equivalent fraction, you will have some other sort of fraction, okay? I'm going to go through I have 3 things to talk to you about, and then I'll show a couple of examples when we're done. Okay, so the next thing is I slide my iPad over a bit, is converting fractions, okay? And in this case, we're going to look, how do you convert a mixed fraction to an improper fraction? Well, there's a couple ways of doing it, okay? So one way, it's a little bit more work, but it might be a little less confusing. So my mixed fraction, I have 3 3/4, or 3/4, okay? So I need to look at that denominator, and that denominator tells me on whatever shape I make, I have to divide it up into that many pieces, okay? So in this case, the denominator is 4. I need to break up my shape into 4 pieces, okay? And what you do, I start off, I drew one square, and again, the reason I do squares is I can divide them up a lot easier than a circle. So that's why I like doing squares. You make a box, and you divide it up into 4, because that's what the denominator tells us. And then I start shading in pieces. And the whole number here, 3, tells me how many full boxes I have to make. So I need to make 3 full boxes. And once I've done that, I go now look at my fraction part. So in my last box, I only need to shade in 3 of the 4 boxes. All right. Excuse me. So now I need to count the pieces. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I have 15 parts or shaded in or pieces, and the denominator stays the same. So because it was 4, I now have 15 over 4. So I've converted my mixed number into an improper number. Sorry, improper fraction. All right. So that's one way of doing it. All right. This second way, where I put or, is quicker, but you got to pay close attention to how you're doing it. So what I'm going to do is the first step, I would take my denominator and I'm going to multiply it by the whole number. And that's 3 times 4. So I've got 12. And now I take that answer and I'm going to add 3 to it because that's telling me how many extra pieces are shaded in. And that gives me 12 plus 3 gives me 15. So my answer is 15, and remember the denominator stays the same, so 15 over 4. So as you can see, this is a little quicker, but it is a little trickier in this spot right here. Okay, so if you join me on my little journey in my workspace, we are going to look how we would change improper to mixed. Back again. So there, a little bit of a glare. All right, so we are looking at converting improper to mixed fractions. All right, so the example I'm doing is 7 over 2. Okay, and the denominator is the key with everything in fractions. So the denominator tells you the number of pieces to break your shape into. Okay, so 2 pieces. Again, I'm using squares because I can draw them a lot easier than circles. So I'm going to draw a square and divide it in half. And then I start shading in the parts. And I keep going and counting how many pieces I've shaded until I reach what my numerator is, which is 7. So I have 1, 2, I draw another shape, 3, 4, draw another shape, 5, 6, draw another shape, 7. So I have 7 things shaded in. All right. The final thing you do is write out the fraction. So you count out how many full boxes you have. 1, 2, 3. There we go. And the last box has 1 piece shaded in, so it'll be 1 over a half, or 2. Okay? Denominators stay the same. Don't trade them. Don't flip them around. They stay the same. All right? Now I'm going to just turn this a little bit over, and I want to show you something of a very bad mistake to make with mixed numbers. So mixed numbers. All right, if you have 3 whole, like this example, and a half, make sure your whole number is bigger than your fraction. Do not write something like this, because I won't know, is that 31 over 2? Is it 3 over 1 over 2? Or don't write it tiny and then write a big fraction beside it, because then that looks like 1 over 32. Okay, so make sure your whole number is written large and your fraction a little tinier. All right, that's an important tip to remember. All right, our final piece today is putting fractions in order, or seeing which fraction is bigger and which is smaller. Now there's there's 2 things that you will look at. And I have comparing fractions. Look at the denominator. I ran out of space, okay? So in this example here, I have 7 over 2, 1 over 2, 11 over 2, 5 over 2, all right? They are all the same denominator. So in this case, I just put them in order, looking at my numerator. And you look at the numerators and we know 1 is smaller than 5, and 5 is smaller than 7, and 7 is smaller than 11. So putting them in order from, in this case, small to big, I'd have 1/2, 5 over 2, 7 over 2, 11 over 2. Those are easy ones to do. The tough one is the ones with different denominators. So in this example, I have 4 fractions. I have 3 over 2, 1 over 4, 3 over 6, and 5 over 2. Okay? Some of this you can do in your head, or just by glancing at the question, I think you can figure out which is the smallest. But you have to be careful, and you don't want to automatically assume that a fraction that has 1 as a numerator is the smallest fraction, because you have to compare the denominators. All right? So guess what you have to do? You have to find the lowest common multiple of 2, 4, and 6. And for those of you that didn't do lowest common multiple, when we did it, this is going to become very hard. And unfortunately, with math, a lot of things, you build your skills as we go. So, I'm just going to turn my iPad around. Okay. There we go. So, all right, so looking up here, lowest common multiple. So multiples, remember, you're skip counting by the given number. So in this case, 2, I'm skip counting by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. 4, I'm skip counting by 4. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. And 6, I'm skip counting by 6. 6, 12, 18. Remember, common multiple of all 3 numbers, which is 12. Okay? Knowing your times table will make this go a lot quicker too. So now, what we're going to do is make some equivalent fractions. And we're also making a new denominator. Okay, so the lowest common multiple is 12. That becomes our new denominator. So we're creating a common denominator so that we can compare all 4 fractions with the same denominator. Okay, and how we do it is, my new denominator is 12. So I look at 3 over 2. So 2 times what will give me 12? And it's 6. And the big rule you need to remember is what you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator. So I multiply 3 by 6, giving me 18 over 12. And as we continue, we look, 4, what do I multiply 4 to get 12? It's 3. Multiply the numerator by 3, 3 twelfths. 6 times 2 will give me the 12. Multiply 3 by 2, I get 6. So the new equivalent fraction is 6 over 12. And finally, I don't know if you can see at the bottom, or I'll just do this. Don't get sick. 2 into 12, so 2 times 6 is 12. 5 times 6 is 30. Okay? Now, they're all the same denominator that I can now compare them. All right. So all my fractions out, I look 3 over 12 is the smallest, then 6 over 12, 18 over 12, and 30 over 12. And this again is small to big. All right. Now, read your instructions carefully. Sometimes they say biggest to smallest, but you have to do this whole process in order to get common denominators. All right. So, I'll just turn this over. Wow, 17-minute video. I think that's enough. I'm going to ask you, you can watch, you can pause it whenever you want, and you could post on the Google Classroom any questions you may have about this. So this is just a quick refresher. Or some of you, it's brand new. So thanks again. And that's my first video. Goodbye.